And I'm Matthew Campbell from Bloomberg News. This is, of course, Maurice Lévy, who needs no introduction or certainly very little introduction, Chairman and CEO of Publicis, the world's third largest advertising agency, and someone who spends probably as much time thinking about these questions of where the media is going as anyone. And so what I'd like to start talking about, Maurice, is innovation, which of course is at the core of everything we're talking about here. And you had a very interesting announcement this week of a new venture capital fund shared with France Télécom, initially focused on Europe, up to 300 million euros, perhaps getting bigger and perhaps expanding beyond that. And that makes me want to ask you, clearly, there are wonderful examples of innovation and business success in technology and media outside of Silicon Valley, but Silicon Valley remains the innovation engine. What's missing in Europe and in other places? Is the secret ingredient money, or is it culture or regulation or something else?
Thank you. I think you have been very short in the introduction about myself. I feel disappointed. I was expecting that you will take 10 minutes. More seriously, we have a problem in Europe, which is not only simply a problem of finding the right project and getting the money and having people who are encouraged. The real issue is that after the first steps, it is culturally very difficult to find people who are saying that they are losing money and they have to support. For example, if Google or Facebook were born in France or in Germany or even in Scandinavia, I think that they would not have had the money after the first 500 million euro loss. And that's the problem. When it comes to a certain amount of money which is lost, you have people who are reluctant to support. They say, okay, we have made the first effort, we have gone that far, and now we think it's time to sell. And this has been the story of many of the startups. There is a lack of patience from the investors. And this is creating a big problem. In a report that I signed with Jean-Pierre Juillet, who is now the head of the public authority for stock market, and he has been Minister of Europe, we wrote a report on the intangible economy. And we found out that there were some models which were much better suited for this kind of operation. The first one, obviously, is what's happening in Silicon Valley. There is an ecosystem with universities, VCs, people with ideas, people who are ready to risk, business angels. The whole system is working extremely well. There is another example, which is Israel. And we have looked at the two examples, and we have seen that this was something which were bearing fruits. And we made a few recommendations. This was in 2006. And unfortunately, it has not given birth to any new idea. And last year, I went to France Télécom. I said, okay, as no one is taking the steps, why don't we do that ourselves? So it was not at the EG8 that the idea came to fruition, because we were about to announce it at the EG8, but there were some hurdles, and finally we decided to wait. But we think that by having two so-called leaders in their domain, plus some financial institution, we will attract a lot of capital. And as a matter of fact, what happened that this week I have already received 2 calls of people who want to invest each one 50 million. Not bad. And I have a deal flow already. no structure, no one was ready. And we already have a few people who are sending their project and to say, okay, we are interested. So what we need is to create the engine and the acceleration of something which already exists and to give a support. So with what has been done with the universities in France, what will be done with ParisTech, what is creating as an ecosystem, and the fact that there is one large, which is France Télécom, Orange, and a small company like ours, together, this can create, I think, a good move and probably generate a few ideas.
Now, the fact that you are doing this and that you, as the CEO of an advertising company, feel you have a role to play in innovation tells us something about how much the advertising industry has changed. You joined Publicis in 1971, I believe, and when you did, an advertising agency was more of a conduit or a broker between marketers and the mass media. Now, your clients can quite easily speak to consumers directly, which I imagine makes you, in some situations, more of a consultant or an advisor than an intermediary. How has that changed how you run an advertising company?
First of all, Publicis has a history of innovation. Long before myself, Marcel Bleustein-Blanchet has been at the origin of many firsts in France. So we have that culture of innovation. We have also the culture of invention. We create new things. And if you look at Publicis and you compare Publicis with WPP or with Omnicom, IPG, or any other agency, you will find that there are a lot of things which are very, very different. The second aspect is that when we look at what was the agency in the past, this full-service agency, in which you had everything together, and then how the agency has evolved with specialization and silos on media, on below the line, on CRM, on creative, on hotshop, etc. We have seen that all along there has been always evolution, there has been always changes, and we are just at the beginning of a new cycle of change, which will be probably one of the most dramatic that we will see. The first thing is obviously what you mentioned regarding the consumer. We were the conduit. Not only we were packaging the message, sometimes helping the client to define his strategy, but we were also the one who were thinking and building the conduit to the consumer. Today, the consumer is much more difficult to catch. The audiences are scattered. To find an area where we can interest the consumer and have a conversation with the consumer is much more complicated, and we cannot do what we were doing yesterday. So we are in a kind of catch-22 because we have some very large, very solid, highly creative agencies which are today what's making the best of our business and the most important share of our business. And this is already something which belongs, I would say, to the past, but only to the present. It is something of the present time and has to be changed quite dramatically. And we have to change the way we work. We have to reorganize. We have to be more nimble, much faster, and we have also to be much more interactive, both with the client and with the consumer. So if you look at what I call in French the trépied, the three legs which is advertiser, media, consumer, you see that in today's world, everything is changing. Advertisers are becoming global, and we cannot serve them only in one single market. The media are changing dramatically through the influence of digital. Not only the classic media are becoming digital, but there is all these new platforms which are changing enormously the way we work and the way we communicate. And the consumer are changing. So if we don't change, I think it's much better to sell immediately the company. So we have to change, and we have to change in a way which will be very difficult, because the most difficult thing in our industry and the most important asset are our people. And you cannot consider that, okay, there is 50,000 people. Out of these 50,000 people in the Publicis Group, there is 15,000 roughly who are working on digital, but there are 35,000 who are not working on digital. And we cannot, and we will not, rewire people. What we have to do is to help them changing, and to help them becoming different and addressing the issues differently. And we have some other issues, and if I want to be very honest with you, which is simply the fact that the way agencies are structured is through silos, P&Ls, and a lot of things are linked to this, and the conflict issue, and we have the Saatchi operation, and the Publicis operation, the Leo Burnett, just to name a few. And all this is working separately, and we have to make it working much more in the interest of the client, and we have to take the best of our talent always to best serve the client. So the change which is going to happen is something which is unprecedented. And I wish I have the recipe. There is a sentence which has been, it was in a book and in a movie in French. The title was Le Guépard. And Prince de Lampedusa said, everything has to change if we want to do not change. And I think this is the reality of the world we live in. Everything has to change if we want to keep the relationship with the client, if we want to attract the best talent, if we want to find solutions in order that we can compete against the platform to get the best talent. Because today, when we look at talents in the holding companies, we have to fight not only against the other holding companies, which is a game that we know extremely well and it's quite easy, but we have to fight against the platforms, the startups, the banks, no longer anyway. This is something which belongs to the past, so we don't fight against the banks to get the best students. But we are at a clear disadvantage when it comes to a startup or a platform. This is the new world. In the startup, they feel that they are entrepreneurs, and they feel that they can have a share in what they are building, and it is a feeling which is very strong. And this is something that you can hardly compete with. And the other thing is the platform with this incredible attraction that they have today. So it's very hard to compete against these people, and we have to be much more innovative and much more compelling for the new world than we are today.
Now, we've talked a lot here about all the ways in which the world has changed and is changing, but I wonder sometimes if maybe the revolution around something like television is a bit slower than we think. I was looking last night at some figures from Nielsen about how people are using new ways of watching video and accessing TV content, broadly defined, and what they tend to show is that there's certainly a shift underway, but the people who are really adopting new technologies are in the minority, and a very small minority of users are doing most of the viewing of streaming video, for example, and then they are maybe tweeting to each other about all the streaming video they're watching, which creates a sense that maybe things are shifting faster than they are. Is traditional TV and other traditional media perhaps stronger than we sometimes think it is?
This has little to do with technology and a lot to do with human beings. And we should not forget that people are human beings. And it's ridiculous, but it's a reality. They have blood, flesh, bones, feelings, habits. And the second nature of people is habit. And they have, I will give you one example which is very interesting, maybe two. One is in the US. People remember maybe about Life, which was a magazine, a great magazine. And Life was dead since quite a few years, and there were still people who were declaring at Nielsen in their media research that they were reading Life. The second is a French newspaper called L'Aurore. And during years, L'Aurore, which had been bought by Le Figaro, was only the last page of Le Figaro, whose title was L'Aurore. And it was exactly the same newspaper. And you had a lot of people. When I say a lot, it was 300,000 people who were saying, I'm buying L'Aurore. There was no longer any L'Aurore. It was dead. So this is something that we don't understand. It's like how people are watching TV. They have their own habits, and they go to something they know because it is familiar. It is something where they feel they have a level of confidence and they have a level of comfort. And this is something which is very often discounted, and we as advertising people, we know very well this phenomenon, but when you have analysts or journalists who are looking at this aspect, they don't get it, and they understand, simply because it's ridiculous. How can they continue to watch TV the same way? But simply because this is something which gives them a feeling of security. It's an area they know, they feel good, they see the same kind of faces, giving the same kind of news, which are boring most of the time, and they have the same kind of program, and they see this kind of show, whatever, which are most of the time with very low level of interest and even lower level of engagement and of involvement of the audience, but they are passive and they receive this. So the audience are still very strong, and when you look at TV in 2011, it has grown. And the market share of TV has grown by almost 100 basis points. So people say, okay, explain to me, you are telling me that the world is going digital, that all this is going to the web, and that the internet is dominating, and Facebook and Twitter and Google, and why TV with this mundane, banal, same kind of format since 30 years is still gaining shares? Simply because there is eyeballs, simply because people, a lot of people are not yet ready to be interactive, or if they are interactive, they like to be interactive in another segment. And most of their life, they are passive, and they like this because it is, they get some rest. They have been, they had a difficult day, and they like the idea. In the US, they will have a beer. In France, they will have something else. And they will watch this, and they will eat popcorns and peanuts, and they will get fat. And this will be fine, and advertisers will go there, and we will do the survey, and we will see that the brand image has raised, and the impact is good, etc.
So old habits die hard.
Exactly. Old habits die hard. And I think that we have to be very mindful of this. And one of the reasons why we see a shift from newspapers to internet, or from magazine to internet, it's because the new generation is not buying the newspapers, they are not buying the magazine, and they are going to internet to get the news. I had, I'm sorry, he's in the room, so I should not mention his name, but I had an interview in Le Monde with my son, and I was defending the press, and it's most like a slam in the face. I say, okay, this is for the old people. We, the digital native, we don't care about where the news is coming from, and we are very happy to go directly to internet and to get the news where they are. And this is explaining the incredible success of the platforms and the web. It's this new generation, and I think that we will see first the fall of the classic press before we see an erosion of TV.